There's a pattern that shows up with quiet consistency in the lives of people who are warm, empathetic, and emotionally generous. They find themselves again and again in relationship with someone who takes more than they give, someone whose need seems bottomless, someone who's charming in public and diminishing in private, someone who makes them feel over time as though their kindness is somehow never quite enough. And when the relationship finally ends, or when they finally find the distance to see it clearly, the question that stays with them isn't anger. It's confusion. Why me? Why does this keep happening? Is there something about me that attracts this? The answer is yes. And it has nothing to do with weakness, and everything to do with something in you that is genuinely good. This video is about that dynamic, not to assign blame to either side, but to understand it, because understanding it is the only thing that changes it. To understand why kind people are targeted, we first need to understand what a narcissist is actually seeking, because it isn't what most people assume. It isn't love in the ordinary sense, and it isn't primarily control, though control often follows. What a narcissist is seeking beneath all the surface behavior is what psychoanalysts call narcissistic supply, a continuous source of validation, admiration, and emotional mirroring that temporarily soothes a self-structure that cannot self-regulate. The concept was developed by the psychoanalyst Otto Kernberg, who spent decades studying severe personality disorders. His finding: the narcissistic individual experiences a profound internal emptiness. Not sadness exactly, but a kind of hollow unsteadiness, and requires constant external input to maintain a coherent sense of self. A kind, emotionally attuned person is not just attractive to this structure, they are almost perfectly suited to it. They notice feelings, they respond to distress, they interpret ambiguous behavior charitably, they stay when others would leave, they try harder when things get difficult, they apologize when they are not sure who is wrong. From the outside, these are qualities of emotional intelligence. From inside a narcissistic dynamic, they are the precise behaviors that make the supply reliable. This is not random. Narcissists, even those who are not consciously strategic, are acutely sensitive to emotional availability. They have spent a lifetime scanning environments for people who can be relied upon to respond. Their radar for warmth, for the desire to help, for the discomfort with conflict is often extraordinarily well calibrated. The psychologist Sandra Brown, who has researched high conflict personalities and their partners extensively, describes this sensitivity as a kind of predatory attunement, not necessarily deliberate, but functionally precise. The person who moves toward distress, who senses when someone needs something and responds before being asked, who takes on emotional labor as a matter of course. These are the people who get noticed. And here's the element that makes it particularly difficult to recognize in the early stages. The narcissist often shows, at the beginning, a quality that feels like the deepest intimacy the kind person has ever experienced. They are seen, they are mirrored, they are told, through words, attention, admiration, that everything they are is exactly right. This is called idealization, and for someone who has spent a lifetime giving more than they receive, who has learned to minimize their own needs in order to be acceptable to others, the experience of being fully seen, fully wanted, can feel like coming home. It isn't home, but it feels more like it than anything they've encountered before. What I'm about to say is the part that most videos on this topic leave out, because it's uncomfortable. But it's also, I think, the most important thing to understand if you want this pattern to actually change. The kind person is not simply a victim of circumstance. There is usually something in their own history that makes this dynamic familiar, even on some level recognizable as belonging. The physician and trauma researcher Gabor Mate has spent years studying how childhood emotional environment shapes the nervous system and the patterns of relationship we carry into adulthood. His central observation is precise. When a child grows up in an environment where their authentic emotional needs are consistently unmet, not through cruelty, but through absence, through parental stress, through a household where certain feelings were simply not welcome, they learn a particular adaptation. They learn to suppress their own needs in order to preserve the connection, to become what the environment requires, to be easy, to be helpful, to be the one who doesn't add to the difficulty that already exists. Mate calls this the loss of authenticity in the service of attachment, and he argues it is one of the most common and least recognized sources of adult suffering. A person shaped by this experience doesn't simply tolerate relationships where they give more than they receive. On some level, they recognize them. The asymmetry is not alarming. It is familiar. The emotional labor is not unfair. It is simply what closeness has always required of them. And a relationship where someone's needs are bottomless, where approval comes and goes unpredictably, where being good enough is always slightly out of reach. This doesn't feel foreign. It feels like home. One of the most consistent features of this dynamic is how difficult it is to leave, even when the person knows intellectually that they should. Part of this is the intermittent reinforcement that characterizes narcissistic relationships. The warmth and the withdrawal alternate unpredictably. The periods of idealization return, briefly, just long enough to restore hope. The nervous system, under these conditions, does not simply become worn down. It becomes, in a precise neurological sense, addicted. The researcher Helen Fisher, whose work on the neuroscience of love and attachment has been widely studied, has shown that the brain activity of someone in an uncertain romantic relationship closely resembles the brain activity of someone in the grip of a substance dependency. The same dopamine pathways, the same craving, the same disproportionate focus on the source of the reward. But there is also something else that holds the kind person in place, something quieter and harder to name. It is the belief that if they could only be more patient, more understanding, more present, they could reach the real person behind the behavior, the wounded one, the one they glimpsed early on in moments of vulnerability. They are not wrong that the wound is there, but they are wrong. And this is the hardest truth, that their love is the thing that will heal it. Understanding this dynamic doesn't mean becoming less kind. It doesn't mean becoming suspicious of connection or hardening the parts of yourself that move toward others, or treating your empathy as a liability to be managed. It means recognizing that kindness directed without discernment isn't the same as love. It is often a form of self-erasure dressed in generous language. The philosopher Simone Weil, who wrote with extraordinary precision about attention and love, made a distinction that matters here. She wrote that truly loving another person requires seeing them as they actually are, not as a projection of our hope or a canvas for our need to be needed or a problem we have the particular gift to solve. Real love, in Weil's framework, is a form of attention that does not distort. And for the kind person who has spent years over-functioning in relationships, learning to see clearly, rather than charitably, rather than hopefully, rather than with the generous interpretation that can become a form of self-deception, is not a loss of warmth. It is warmth that finally includes themselves. If this pattern has shown up in your life, more than once in different forms, with different faces, it isn't because you are broken or naive or too much. It's because something in you learned very early that love looked like this, that worth was earned this way, that the right response to someone's need was to give more of yourself. That learning can change, not by becoming less, but by including yourself in the same compassion you have always offered to others. Maya Angelou once said, "When someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time. That isn't hardness. That is the kindest thing you can do, for yourself and ultimately for them." I want to ask you something, and I mean it genuinely. When you think about the relationships in your past that cost you the most, what was it you kept hoping would finally change? Leave it in the comments. That answer might be the most important thing you write today. If this series is resonating, subscribing means the next video reaches you too, and there's more coming.